Hey everybody, it's Shaman Sister Sin, and you're listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by Earth Mama's Apothecary and littleshaman.org. That's me, Little Shaman. Today I want to talk to you about narcissists and dehumanization. It's something we often see in narcissistic relationships, but for some reason it doesn't get all that much attention, so I wanted to discuss it with you today. Dehumanization as a phenomenon is not new, nor is it exclusive to narcissism, although you could argue that all abuse, including abuse of power, is narcissistic in theory or nature. Dehumanization is exactly what it sounds like. A person or group of people is stripped of their human individuality and human qualities. This makes mistreating them easy to justify. If we think back to the Nazi death camps, when people were asked about what took place, they said things like, well, they were only Jews, or they were only gypsies, or they were only Poles. This implies that they weren't people, so people didn't care. This is what dehumanizing people results in. We have spoken at length about the way narcissists objectify people. That is, they see people as objects. Dehumanization generally occurs with objectification. It leads to abuse and oppression both on a large scale and in interpersonal relationships. Pathologically narcissistic people objectify others as a matter of course. This is their method of relating to the rest of the world, and dehumanization usually follows. This is because most pathologically narcissistic people lack empathy. Empathy is how we connect with other living things. When someone doesn't have empathy, or when their empathy is affected or maladaptive, this connection does not occur. When we don't have a connection with others, it makes it easier to mistreat them because there's no understanding of their feelings. Most people can probably stomp on a bug. There's no real connection with the bug. It is alien to our experience, and it's too different to feel kinship or understanding with for most people. In that same vein, most people couldn't stomp a puppy to death, and again, this is for the same reason. Most of us feel a kinship and a connection to other mammals, and to dogs in particular. We understand that dogs have feelings just like we do. This is empathy. Our presumption of the feelings of another living thing often has a lot to do with how much empathy we have for that living thing. For example, people often say things like, eating dogs is cruel, but eating chickens is not. They're just chickens. They don't have feelings. Again, we hear that word, just. This word implies that they are insignificant or that they're unimportant. The farther something is from our own experience, the less we identify with it. The assumption that the chicken does not have, quote, real or higher level feelings and therefore cannot suffer is directly related to how much empathy is felt for them and therefore how much compassion they're shown, sadly. This is a false assumption, by the way. They suffer very much when they're treated inhumanely. So do pigs, cows, sheep, goats, and all other animals. Every living thing suffers when it's abused, and every living thing deserves compassion. For myself personally, the way people treat animals is a huge indication for me. It's one of the ways I measure whether they're the type of person I want to associate with. Anyone who is cruel or uncaring toward animals is not somebody I want to have anything to do with. And if someone I do associate with shows cruelty or a lack of care for animals, my opinion of them changes immediately. Immediately. The way we treat the most innocent and voiceless in this world is the true measure of who we are. So I just wanted to say that. What we see then is that the kinship felt with another living thing and the assumption of whether something can suffer has a lot to do with empathy for most people. Pathologically narcissistic people are no different in that regard. Where they are different is that they don't feel this connection to other human beings either. There are people who can harm or even kill another person as easily as they can step on a bug. To them, there's no connection, no empathy, and therefore, there's no difference. Your suffering doesn't matter because it doesn't even register. They may or may not have intellectual understanding of it, but there's no emotional understanding or connection with it at all. This is where the problem is. Without that connection, there is no empathy. This is how narcissistic people are able to objectify others. Because of how they function, there's no connection for them. Other people have uses, and that's all. They are treated as things, and that's their value. People who have no use have no value. Things that have no value are trash. When people are objectified, they are then dehumanized. They are treated with no understanding, no compassion, no decency. There's no appreciation or understanding for anything that makes them a person. They're robbed of all their human qualities and simply treated as objects with no feelings. Dehumanization results in abuse and oppression every time. Invalidation, dominance, control, gaslighting, discarding, and more all occur because the individual is regarded as less than human, and unfortunately, this is exactly how these things cause the victim to feel. The routine and continuous dismissing and disregarding of not just the victim's feelings and needs, but of them as an actual person results in the victim feeling depressed, worn out, worthless, and beaten down. The narcissist is sucking all of the person's energy and self-worth out and using it to prop up their own. This is that person's use, and when they're used up, they will likely be discarded like an empty soda can, and with the narcissistic person having no more problem doing so than you would have throwing that same can away. Why would you keep it, right? It's useless. The results of objectification and dehumanization can be devastating. This is how things like murder, slavery, genocide, and all manner of cruelty happen. Dehumanization is a psychological and emotional justification to treat human beings like objects. When you say to the narcissist, "How can you treat me like this?" their answer usually involves either a flat-out denial or some justification of how you deserve it. Put very simply, they don't get it, and more importantly, they don't care. There is a missing linkage there, and barring a scientific breakthrough, this may never be able to be addressed. If you are being dehumanized and objectified, you need to really understand that not only is this wrong, it's not sustainable. Even if you believe that you can somehow take it, that you can take the abuse, it's not going to last. Eventually, you will come up empty. Everybody does. When that happens, there will be no more reason for the narcissistic person to continue on anymore in this situation, and they will very likely leave. It's like a vampire. Some people have more vitality than others, but everybody has a limit. Everybody becomes drained eventually. When that happens, the vampire simply moves on to feed on somebody else. This is what they do. And then what? All that for what? For nothing. Allowing someone to abuse you does not prove that you care. It doesn't prove your loyalty, and it's not going to fix them. It doesn't prove anything except that your self-worth and your self-esteem need some work. These are things you can definitely address. You definitely can address that, but it's impossible to heal in the middle of ongoing abuse. Before you can do anything about the situation, you have to realize that the narcissistic person isn't the only one with the problem. Fixing them is not going to fix you. Fixing you isn't going to fix them. You are two totally different people, and even though it seems hard to believe, neither person's problems have anything to do with each other. Now, you may feel beaten down and stuck, but if you are watching this video, you aren't totally beaten. You understand that there's a problem, and you can see that the situation is wrong. You aren't totally stuck because you're still moving forward by gathering information and trying to understand. You still have self-worth because you know you're being treated badly and that you don't deserve it. People who truly have no self-worth don't believe that. They believe they do deserve it. You just need to develop and nurture the things that are sparking that anger and that sense of injustice. These are the tools you need to change your life. You already have them. You just have to use them. Hope this clears a few things up for you. As always, I look forward to your comments, questions, and suggestions, so please keep those coming. I take appointments over the phone and online or via text message, however you would like to do it. So if you'd like to schedule an appointment with me, visit littleshaman.org and click the bookings tab to do that. You've been listening to the Meditations and More podcast brought to you by littleshaman.org. That's me, the Little Shaman. May the Great Spirit bless you and have a wonderful day.